Creativity is a risk. Y'all ever thought about creativity that way? It is a risk. Being aware of and engaging our creative self can make us feel vulnerable. It can be a welcome mat, so to speak, into our inner lives where we are forced to examine our own selves and also through our creativity, invite other people to examine that inner life with us. It can bring us comfort and peace and hope. Creativity can also bring us discomfort and challenge, stretching us to move within those creative practices. And friends, we don't often like to be challenged or discomforted or stretched. The thing about spiritual practice, of which creativity is a spiritual practice, the thing about spiritual practices is that they are indeed a practice, something we need to keep doing over and over and over again. It's never perfected. Spiritual practices are not a destination. We never arrive to the end of them. Those are not the goals of spiritual practices. The whole point of spiritual practice is creatively opening ourselves up to God. Now, we are all creative beings, every single one of us. It looks different in each of us. We've talked about that the past couple of weeks, how God has made us as creative individuals, but that looks different for all of us. And we hunger for more creativity in our lives. The problem we have as adults with creativity is that we might be tempted to put it into a box saying it's just for children, and as adults we've moved past such things. Some of us have taken those lessons to heart. Remember when you were taught to only color within the lines and that's what made the picture good? You know, you had to make the dog brown or black or the house a certain color, and the sun has to be yellow. It can't be purple, for goodness sakes. We're taught what is acceptable creativity. But when we take those lessons too much to heart, that blocks a part of who we are. Now, our creativity, our imagination is a way to open ourselves up to God and to one another. So it's not just for children. Children tend to be willing to take more creative risks. They haven't learned to block that part of themselves. See, they agree next door. That's what that is. Now, as adults, we admire the risks that kids take with their creativity when they make the sun purple, when they build massive sculptures out of Lego and call them ridiculous, made-up, fun names. We admire kids' creativity, their confidence in themselves as they take creative risks, like there's absolutely nothing that kids can't do. Kids think that they can do absolutely anything. Isn't that great about kids? Isn't that fun? There's like no limit on what they can do. We have to learn through lessons that are not good for us, that we have creative limits, because creativity is our true nature. Now, we've talked about Julia Cameron and her book, The Artist's Way, A Spiritual Path to Higher Creativity, and she lists 6 things that we have to stop doing in order to embrace our own creativity. Number 1 is we have to stop telling ourselves it's too late. It's too late. We have to stop telling ourselves it's too late. We have to stop waiting until we make enough money to do something that we really love. She says, number 3, we have to stop telling ourselves it's just our ego whenever we yearn for a more creative life. And we have to stop, you're going to like this one, we have to stop telling ourselves that our dreams don't matter. That our dreams don't matter. And that they are only dreams and that we should be more sensible. Has anybody else thought they should be more sensible in life? That that's what they're supposed to do? She says, number 5, we have to stop fearing what our friends or family would think, and if they'll think that we are crazy. Friends, just embrace that. It's more fun anyway. And she says, number 6, we have to stop telling ourselves that creativity is a luxury and that we should be grateful for what we've got. She goes on to say that we have to protect and nurture our inner artist. Now, I'm seeing faces, and some of y'all are loving this. You're eating it up. You're like, yes, this is great. I feel that this speaks to me. And others of us, this is a real stretch because we live in the land of practicality. And by golly, we're adults and we're not supposed to be that creative. None of that woo-hoo-ness for us. But God has and continues to act creatively in our world and in the lives of each one of us. We see creativity over and over and over again in the scriptures. Now, of course, there are scriptures in that first chapter of Genesis and the second creation story where it's all about creativity, but also think about all the other biblical stories that you know of that showcase God's creativity in being with God's people. Noah building his boat. Abraham and that burning bush. Is that not a creative way to get somebody's attention? Right? Abraham and his call by God to leave his homeland, go start over in a new place, and how his descendants will number the stars. His wife Sarah's incredibly, truly geriatric pregnancy. God's presence in the desert with Ishmael and Hagar, and how Hagar calls him the God who sees. Joseph in his exile by his brothers to Egypt, his dream sent by God to help him in his new land. Moses in the burning bush, leading his people out of Egypt, going before them by cloud by day and by fire by night. God's Spirit shone at Jesus' baptism. Jesus calling each of his disciples in ways that they will hear and understand. All of Jesus' parables and miracles showcasing God's creativity at work in the world in practical ways. And for some of us, our personal miracle, that first one, where he turned that water into wine. Jesus feeding 5,000 people with 5 loaves of bread and 2 small fish, healing God's people of all sorts of illnesses. How God's Spirit is shown to move through the crowd on the day of Pentecost. Paul's call from God on the road to Damascus, hearing God's voice, and on and on and on. Here's the point. All of those stories showcase God's creativity and being in this world with us. There is no end to God's creativity and being with us. And every single one of those examples showed God taking a risk. We don't think of God as taking risks, do we? Artist, writer, and pastor Troy Bronsnick reminds us that the act of creativity requires a leap into the unknown, and God jumps out with enormous courage and imagination. We often domesticate the messiness of a creative God who entered into a space with no guarantees. We often suppose that creation for God was without risk because of theological commitments regarding God's knowledge of the future. But creativity necessarily requires the risk of mixing unknown conditions in order to see newness emerge. So can you just imagine for just a second that split fraction of time between when God said, "Let there be light," and then light occurring? What a huge leap into the unknown. What courage on God's part. God has shown time and time again taking risks with creation, creating life, living with that creation in intimate ways, guiding it, loving it, all had unknown elements and outcomes involved. Friends, life, we know already, y'all don't need me to tell you this, we already know that life is not without risk. Life is not without risk. We're never going to be able to get away from some kind of element of risk showing up in our lives. So in order to live, we must be willing to engage in some risky things. And nurturing our creative selves, nurturing that spiritual practice of creativity that God has instilled in each one of us allows us to take risks in ways that feed our spirit at the same time. God took and continues to take risks in creation itself. And friends, we're not just living in a world created with risk, we're also created to take risks ourselves. Just like creativity is embedded in each one of us, in our DNA, so is our ability to take risks. Are we really willing to try and live our life devoid of creativity and devoid of trying to take no risks at all? Can we not at least be willing to try those things? Expressing ourselves to God through the creativity that God has given us allows us to do just that. Amen. Now, when you guys walked in here, I gave you a little half sheet of paper. It's bright orange, so you can't lose it. So that is your homework for the week. I never give y'all homework. This is homework if you want it. You don't have to. But it is a spiritual practice. It is a prayer. It is a creative type of prayer. You can read the instructions, but basically you write about people. You write words that describe the people that you know and admire or even have heard of that take risks. And then it invites you to do the same thinking of your own life. And you can circle those, and you can color those, and you can scribble by those. You can put those on serious paper. You can put it on note paper. You do whatever you want. There's no limits. But I invite you all to pray this prayer during this week. I invite all of you to pray with me now. God of grace and mercy and redemption, the brokenness of the world surrounds us. We may benefit from this brokenness, God. We may participate in this brokenness. We may persist against the brokenness. We may move back and forth between those positions. Wherever we may be situated, we seek your presence with us to shape our response so that we can transition from wounded healers to healed stewards of restoration and liberation and truth for you in the love of creation. God, you have given us so many gifts, responsibility and stewardship, care and concern for creation. You have commanded us to love our neighbors and our enemies, and you journey with us with wisdom, discernment, and truth to equip us to be what the world needs from us. May we have the courage and be willing to take risks to follow you. Amen.